Hey everybody, my name is Alex with Hake Hardware, and in this video we're going to back up and restore an MDADM RAID 5 array. This should be pretty quick and easy. I did run into a snag where when I assembled or reassembled my RAID 5 array, I had no spares. So I ended up having to remove a disk and then add it back as a spare and then rebuild the parity, which was kind of a pain. But I'm just going to quickly go through the steps that I took. I've actually done with this already. But it was a little bit nerve-wracking. Anytime you're doing anything with data like this, you want to make sure you have it backed up because a lot of things could go wrong. The 3-2-1 rule, check that out if you're not familiar with it, but you really should have an additional backup, especially when you're doing any sort of maintenance like this where you could potentially lose data. So I'm going to have this guide linked in my YouTube video. Check the description. And we're just going to go through a few things. Like I said, I already have this assembled or reassembled on my system, so I'm not going to go through it all again. But there are a few things that I do want to go over. So the first thing you're going to want to do is basically get the current configuration, and you can do sudo mdadm detail scan. And that's going to print out, and it might be more for you. I just have one array. It's dev md0. So you're going to see in my commands, I'm using dev md0. If yours is different, you're going to have to update the commands for whatever yours is listed as. And I have one spare. Now, despite this saying spares equals 1, it didn't seem when I reassembled it to care about that. So maybe it could be different for you. And then it lists the UUID here. So I would recommend copying this, and potentially you might need it if for some reason your config doesn't work correctly. I don't really know if you need this, but I'd recommend just saving it just in case. All right, so let's say now you've reinstalled your operating system. It should pretty much be fine. What you're going to want to do is just run install MDADM again. So sudo apt install MDADM, and then just want to reassemble, or it just says assemble, I guess. So sudo mdadm assemble scan. And when I ran this, I didn't get any sort of output, and it actually made a configuration file for me. And inside the configuration file, it had this listed. So I didn't need to necessarily use this, but for some reason, when you run your scan, if it doesn't find it or it doesn't create the config, you could go ahead and add this in there. So your config is at sudo nano etc mdadm slash mdadm.conf. You can see mine's listed at the bottom here. It says it was automatically generated, and I think it should do that when you do the assemble. So, uh, who knows? Hopefully it's good for you. But yeah, ideally that gets created automatically, and you shouldn't have to worry about recreating that. Okay, so if it worked good, you can just double check by doing sudo mdadm detail, and then I'm going to do dev md0 because that's what I have listed up here. And I can see right now that I have 8 devices, 7 active, 1 spare, and it actually is degraded and recovering because I had to remove and then re-add a drive as a spare. So you don't actually lose data from that, but it is a little bit scary because if a drive fails while this is happening, then I will lose my data. So that's why it is degraded. So actually, let's go over, if for some reason um, you don't have a spare, like me, and I probably did something wrong at some point to cause this. I don't think it's typical, but if for some reason you don't have any spares, it took me a while to figure this out because I kept seeing instructions online. Oh, you fail the drive, you remove it, and then you add it. But nobody had this dash spare. So when I went to add it, it literally just added it as an active drive, which was pointless because now I had 0 spares again. So and this is a little scary. You first have to fail a drive, and I just chose a random one. So you can see up here I have 8 different drives. I just chose SDH. I failed that drive. I removed it from my RAID, and at this point you're in a degraded system or state, and then you're going to add it back as a spare, and it's going to stay in a degraded state as it recovers the parity for your array. And then regardless of what happens, you're going to want to do sudo update initramfs. That way it gets the latest state of the array and you're able to mount it once your system boots up. And for me, I use fstab to automatically mount my RAID array. It works great. I usually do it to media shared because that's where I have my shared drive typically mounted. So if I turn this, I share this with Samba or using Samba, which I have a guide on that. Feel free to check it out as a shared drive on the network. And so when I mount this drive to other computers, I always mount it to media/shared. So it's just a place I've always used. And you can see what your UUID is for your RAID array by just running this sudo blkid/dev/md0 or your equivalent, whatever you have. I get something like this where, and you can see the UUID is slightly different than what we have like listed here. So you're going to want to make sure you use the correct UUID, and that's going to be the one that gets printed out when you run that command up here. And then this is what my fstab looks like. I just have the UID specified, my mount point, ext4, defaults no fail, 0, 0. And if you're not familiar with that, actually I should probably put open up your fstab file, and then we'll do sudo nano etc fstab. Then add the following using your UUID and mount point. There we go. All right, fix the guide up a little bit. Again, I will be linking this in the description. And then once you're done with that, Control X, press Control plus X, then Y, then Enter to save, then mount. Then we're going to mount it with sudo mount-AV. And you can do this while it's rebuilding. I was a little bit worried. You can actually use your drive entirely like you would if it was in a perfect active state. But it will be a little bit slow because it basically is going to be running, like maxing out a single drive while it rebuilds that parity. And then df-h if you want to check and make sure everything looks good. So yeah, this is like a, two birds with one stone type of guide. You get to figure out how to fail a drive, remove it, and add a new one as a spare. It's a very similar process for if a drive goes bad, you fail it, remove it, and add a new one. Assuming, you don't need to add it as a spare, you would just do add instead of spare. So that'll be it for this guide. Hopefully it was helpful. I will see you in the next one.